evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. Trump proposes the federal budget for 2021. He's calling for a significant reduction in government spending over the next 10 years. And the Democrats on the campaign trail in New Hampshire, the state to host the nation's first primary tomorrow. Former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, Pete Buttigieg, in the spotlight after a contested win in Iowa. After more than 2 years, the Department of Justice is formally charging suspects for one of the largest cyber attacks in U.S. history. The department says 4 members of the Chinese army are allegedly behind the massive Equifax data theft of 2017. Among the rapid escalation of the coronavirus outbreak in China, what is the real death toll of the virus? Our undercover reporter called the funeral homes in Wuhan at the epicenter of the outbreak to find out. And the suspect who allegedly tried to assassinate NYPD officers has been charged. Unified officials today condemned the attacks. The Trump administration released its proposed budget for fiscal year 2021 and beyond today. It's focused on job creation and reducing the country's deficit. It calls on the government to reduce its spending by over $4 trillion by 2030.
Against a backdrop of low unemployment and rising wages, the Trump administration released its fiscal year 2021 budget on Monday. It calls for reducing annual government spending by $4.4 trillion over 10 years. It also aims to reduce the budget deficit each year and achieve a balanced budget in 15 years. The most significant cuts are to foreign aid and environmental programs. Trump proposes to reduce foreign assistance by 21% and reinvest the money at home.
But even at $6 billion, we still are the largest donor into the humanitarian assistance space. We think 25% of overall contributions is the right percentage.
Nearly $2 trillion worth of cuts will come from mandatory spending. This includes entitlement programs such as Social Security and Medicare. But beneficiaries of these two programs are not affected. Savings instead will come from things like reduced drug prices.
We're not touching Medicare. We want to keep Medicare. We're not touching Social Security. We're making our country stronger again. We're not decreasing Medicaid.
Defense spending will also increase after 2021. Countering China's threat is also included. $1.5 billion is set aside for the Indo-Pacific strategy. This is up 20 to 30% from last year.
That countering China is not just an Indo-Pacific region issue, it's actually global. So you're seeing additional resources for Prosper Africa in the African region and some resources in the Western Hemisphere as well.
$2 million is requested for the border wall. That's significantly lower than previous years. Considering the coronavirus, $4.3 billion is prioritized for fighting infectious diseases. The proposal still needs approval from the House. It has rejected Trump's proposed cuts in previous years.
Democratic presidential hopefuls campaigning across New Hampshire before tomorrow's primary. The majority of voters in the state are unaffiliated. They will have to choose which party's primary they will vote in when they go to cast their ballots.
Democratic candidates campaigning across the Granite State before the nation's first primary on Tuesday in New Hampshire. Frontrunner in the polls, Sanders told the New York Times in September he doesn't think billionaires should exist, and now he's boasting that he built a grassroots campaign on small donations.
We don't go to rich people's homes and get advice from millionaires and billionaires who are raising all kinds of money.
Although Buttigieg says he respects Senator Sanders, he indicates Sanders may be too far from moderate to appeal to most U.S. citizens.
But when I hear this message go out that you're either for a revolution or you got to be for the status quo, that's a vision of the country that doesn't have room for most of us.
How do you explain?
Meanwhile, in Hampton, Biden caught on camera calling out a town hall attendee after she voiced her concerns about his performance in Iowa.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were. Now you got to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you. It was a little bit confusing in Iowa.
But only 3 of the 7 presidents elected since 1976 won their primary in the Hawkeye state. Senator Warren saying the way for Democrats to win the presidency is not by launching attacks on one another.
We have one job in November: beat Donald Trump.
President Trump hosting a rally in Manchester, New Hampshire on the very night before the primary. In 2016, Trump lost the state to Hillary Clinton by a razor-thin margin of less than 2,800 votes. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
And the campaigns for Buttigieg and Sanders have requested a recanvass of the Iowa caucus results. And in other news, the DOJ has announced an indictment related to the massive Equifax data theft in 2017. The attack is one of the largest in U.S. history and compromised the personal data of almost 150 million Americans. 4 members of the Chinese army are named in the indictment.
The Department of Justice today charged 4 members of the Chinese army with stealing the personal data of over 150 million U.S. citizens. The theft happened in 2017 when the hackers got access to the computer system of credit reporting agency Equifax.
The hackers spent weeks conducting reconnaissance, uploading malicious software, and stealing login credentials, all to set up the stage to steal vast amounts of data from Equifax's systems.
It is one of the largest data breaches in U.S. history. The hackers stole names, social security numbers, birth dates, and addresses, which can then be used for fraud or other malicious purposes.
This data has economic value, and these thefts can feed China's development of artificial intelligence tools, as well as the creation of intelligence targeting packages.
This is not an isolated case. Chinese hacking of American companies is rampant. Other high-profile attacks include Marriott Hotels and Anthem Health Insurance.
80% of our economic espionage prosecutions have implicated the Chinese government. And about 60% of all trade secret theft cases in recent years involve some connection with China.
This is only the second time in history Chinese hackers have been indicted. The DOJ acknowledged they are powerless to bring the accused to justice since they live in China, but said when those hackers do slip up in the future, they will be caught.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is urging governors to adopt a cautious mindset when doing business with China.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo had a warning for state and local lawmakers Saturday as he addressed the National Governors Association. Be wary of China.
And when it comes to doing business, I'm asking you to adopt a cautious mindset.
Pompeo, a sharp critic of China, said Beijing seeks to exploit U.S. openness and freedom to undermine the United States. He said China is trying to expand its influence at the state and local levels, not just the federal level.
It's happening in your states with consequences for our foreign policy, for the citizens that reside in your states, and indeed for each of you.
Just last month, U.S. prosecutors charged Harvard University Chemistry Department Chair Charles Lieber with lying about his alleged links to the Chinese government. China has denounced Pompeo's past comments targeting Beijing and the ruling Communist Party as vicious attacks. China's foreign ministry said his remarks reflect fear and arrogance.
And in Japanese waters, lockdown on the Diamond Princess cruise ship continues. Testing has found 66 more confirmed cases of coronavirus. Thousands of passengers have more than a week left on board until the quarantine is lifted.
At least 65 new cases of the Wuhan coronavirus have been found on the Diamond Princess. It is currently docked in Yokohama, Japan. That brings the total number of infections on board to 135. Some people have been taken to hospitals, but thousands are still on the ship under lockdown. Japan's government says they are considering testing all passengers aboard, regardless of whether they have symptoms. Passengers are set to disembark on February 19th, when the quarantine lifts. The Diamond Princess was placed on a 2-week quarantine on arriving at Yokohama on February 3rd. This after a man who disembarked in Hong Kong was diagnosed with the virus.
Indian staff members on that cruise ship in Japan want to leave. They say they're at risk of catching the coronavirus because they're not properly separated from sick passengers. They sent out a video plea aimed at the Indian Prime Minister for help.
Please Please help save those who have not been affected yet. There are 160 Indian crew members and 8 Indian passengers on board. Please rescue us. Help evacuate us before we contract the virus. 90% of us are healthy as of now. I appeal to India's Prime Minister Modi. Please bring us home safe and sound.
This weekend, within a 12-hour period, a suspect attempted to assassinate NYPD police in 2 separate shootings. While the suspect is in custody, city officials got together to condemn the attacks. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more from police headquarters.
2 separate shootings, 2 officers wounded, and 1 suspect in police custody, all within a 12-hour period over the weekend.
I will point out that this coward immediately laid down, but only after he ran out of bullets.
Following the commissioner's lead, city leaders on Monday condemned the attacks.
The assassination failed, but there was an assassination on the symbol of public safety.
Suspect Robert Williams allegedly entered a police station and fired his pistol at officers until it was empty. Hours before that, police say he walked up to a police car, asked an officer for directions, and without warning, shot at them. Adams said this will have reverberations.
Anytime a person walks to a police vehicle, they will remember that encounter.
Commissioner Shea said this brings him back to 2014 when 2 NYPD officers were assassinated shortly after anti-police protests.
We had people marching in New York City last week, and I condemned it, and I condemn it right here again today, using profanities against the police department.
New York's police unions, however, are blaming officials who've used anti-police rhetoric for these crimes. But council member Andy King said he doesn't think rhetoric is to blame. He said this case appeared to be isolated and personal.
And more importantly, I ask everyone to be more human to one another. And as we're more human to each other, some of the issues that we deal with each and every kind of vanish.
Williams has been charged with attempted murder, criminal weapon possession, and resisting arrest. Miguel Moreno, NTD News, New York.
Up next, NTD's exclusive investigation on the truth of China's coronavirus outbreak. Funeral home staff in Wuhan giving a staggering account of how many bodies they deal with each day, further substantiating the world's suspicion that China's downplaying the real death toll.
Every once in a while, something comes along so masterful, it leaves you in awe. So inspiring, it changes your life. So beautiful, you wish it would never end. When that happens, it's something not to be missed. Shen Yun, an all-new production every year.
Viewers have described China Uncensored like The Daily Show, but about China.
At the beginning, I was super excited when I got 500 views, and now the show's grown to about 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. One episode reached 7.9 million people. I'm a little freaked out that that many people have seen my face. In 5 years, I see China Uncensored as the sole source of edutainment worldwide.
New studies from China raise questions about the measures being taken to combat the novel coronavirus. Are they really enough? Our reporter Tiffany Meyer brings us more.
Across China, people are heading back to work today after the Lunar New Year holiday was prolonged due to the coronavirus outbreak. Yet even in Beijing, many shops and workplaces remain closed. As of Sunday and Monday, Beijing and Shanghai are on soft lockdown, which means access is limited to non-residents. Checkpoints are set up to test people's body temperature, and only residents' cars are allowed inside communities. A complete lockdown could go into effect if confirmed cases of the coronavirus are found. Beijing is one of the highest risk cities in China as millions return from traveling over the Lunar New Year holidays. Due to the outbreak, many schools have closed their doors. Schools in Shanghai will reopen in March, while Beijing has not yet announced when its schools will reopen. This comes as the coronavirus shows no signs of slowing. According to interviews with 2 funeral homes inside Wuhan, every day the funeral homes cremate 4 to 5 times as many bodies as before the coronavirus outbreak. There's no official figure yet about how many corpses are burned in all of Wuhan's funeral homes, as the information is censored. On the other hand, many patients aren't tested for the coronavirus. If they die, their death isn't labeled as virus-related, which makes it even harder to get an accurate number. But based on investigations, it seems likely the number of bodies being cremated in a single day in Wuhan already exceeds the official figures of the total death toll. And inconsistencies on the incubation period of the novel coronavirus. New research from China shows it generally takes 3 days from the time of infection for symptoms to appear. But at the longest, it can take up to 24 days. That's much longer than 14 days, which was assumed to be the longest time before. This raises the question, is the 2-week-long quarantine enough? According to 1,099 confirmed cases from 552 Chinese hospitals, 87.9% of patients had a fever. That means more than 10% of confirmed virus cases never showed a higher body temperature. This raises another question. Is measuring body temperature really enough?
How many people have died since the coronavirus outbreak began in China? Really? What's the true situation in Wuhan? One source of information is funeral homes in Wuhan. Our reporter, Undercover, called them up, and the numbers they disclose are heart-wrenching.
This is an official from a government-owned funeral home in Wuhan, the epicenter of China's coronavirus outbreak. NTD distorted the voice to protect the official's identity. The person was talking to an NTD reporter who posed as a member of China's central government. The funeral home official says the number of bodies they received skyrocketed in recent weeks, peaking at 127 on February 3rd. But he said that's not the number being recorded officially.
Okay.
Only about 6% of the deaths are recorded as confirmed cases. If other funeral homes in Wuhan are in the same situation, where only 6% of the deaths are counted officially as part of the coronavirus death toll, the real number of lives claimed by the virus could be over 10,000. The official says that many of the patients weren't even able to be treated before passing away.
Oh. Oh.
The person says local officials tell them to get rid of the bodies within an hour and a half, but because there are so many bodies, the funeral homes are stretched to their limit. People who speak out with views different from the Chinese regime continue to be under threat. China has summoned or detained several doctors and citizen journalists since the outbreak started.
In an unusual move, Chinese netizens are posting selfies demanding freedom of speech, and it was sparked by the death of a whistleblower. NTD's Juliet Song reports.
Chinese netizens are starting an online movement demanding freedom of speech following the death of the doctor who blew the whistle on the coronavirus and later died of the infection. Dr. Li Wenliang's death sparked an unusual outpouring of grief and anger on Chinese social media. To mourn Li, some social media users, mostly younger people, posted selfies wearing face masks or holding up paper that says, "We can't do it. We don't understand." The quote is a response to the punishment that Li got after he warned his friends in an online chat room that he was seeing new pneumonia-like cases. He was summoned by Wuhan police and signed a letter saying his warning was untrue. The letter listed 2 questions. The first question asks whether he could stop his illegal behavior, to which Li wrote, "Yes, I can." The second said, "Do you understand you will be punished if you continue this illegal behavior?" Li signed, "I understand." Some netizens' photos also show them holding up the quote, "I demand freedom of speech," and "A healthy society should not just have one voice." Now, a famous quote once said by Li. These photos were quickly deleted on major Chinese social platforms such as Weibo, but overseas Chinese are also responding to this demand. Last Sunday, about 100 Chinese people gathered in Manhattan's Central Park. They held activities mourning Dr. Li in all black. Face masks with the quote, "We can't do it, we don't understand," are scattered around the banner that says, "Whistles that wake up China." Chinese users on overseas Twitter also started using the hashtag. Reporting by Juliet Song, NTD News.
Coming up, South Korean movie Parasite makes history by winning Best Picture at the Oscars. It's the first foreign language film ever to win the award. More after the break.
We are being censored. America's news outlets no longer provide the truth. 90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. The Epoch Times is independent. We're not controlled by any special interests, and we never will be. The Epoch Times is a non-partisan media. That means we don't stand for any political party. This is a battle between truth and deceit, a battle between forces that would ensnare this country in ignorance, and between a media that wants to present you with the truth. Subscribe today and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
Down south, young children jockey for place, racing each other on their pet llamas in an annual tradition in South America.
Bounding along a dirt path high up in the Andes are the young llama riders of the Ecuadorian people. These rough riders take part in races which are held every year. The winner of this year's llama riding race is a 10-year-old. She says that she finds the racing to be quite a thrill.
Llama racing excites me. In my mind, I'm thinking about whether I'm going to win or lose.
Participants can be as young as 4 years old, but don't let the age requirement fool you. Letting a child around these furry mounts isn't exactly harmless.
Careful not to walk behind llamas because they kick.
Diana's mother, however, thinks positively about her racing and is keen to give her support.
It brings me joy, win or lose. The important thing is to participate and compete.
This year's race was located in one of Ecuador's national parks. The purpose of the event is to help spread awareness about the importance of preserving the environment.
Coming up, a resurgence in traditional craftsmanship in London. The story of how an 80th birthday led to a revival of artisanal maps after the break.
Are you tired of newspapers spinning the truth and pushing false narratives? And are you looking for honest coverage of Spygate, the true story of collusion? Or the truth behind the crisis at our southern border? Or how the Chinese Communist Party is working to subvert America and our way of life? Then you need to check out the Epoch Times newspaper. It's independent, nonpartisan, and it doesn't push any political agendas. Just go to readepoch.com and try it yourself for a full month for just $1. You'll absolutely love it.
A studio in London is creating some of the world's only artisan globes. Our UK correspondent Jane Werrell went to find out more.
In this warehouse in North London, it's just a normal day. Going up the stairs to work leads to another world of globe making.
Every single globe we make is completely unique. We couldn't copy it if we tried, because it's all hand painted.
There are several steps to globe making that require a lot of concentration.
After several months of practice, you will work out how to do it perfectly like this.
After printing a custom-made map, perhaps the client wants some specific illustrations, it's carefully cut out. Some layers of paint are added before it's stuck on a sphere, which is sometimes made from a fiberglass-like material. Painters then add the coastline detail. It's finally varnished and assembled with a wooden or metal base.
You kind of need to be in your own world. People are really focused, and I think that's why everyone enjoys their job.
Peter Bellaby didn't plan to start this business. It happened after he went on a search for a globe for his father's 80th birthday.
There was nothing that really caught my eye, so I thought I'd have a go at just making one myself. Naively, I thought it would take about 3 or 4 months, and it took 2 years.
The process cost a fair amount of money.
Not that long in, probably about 4 or 5 months in, I'd already spent way more than I had imagined I would spend on my dad for every birthday put together, let alone one.
Unable to find any useful information on Google or in books, he says it's all about taking the time to practice. Now he hires over 20 people and creates globes for clients across the world.
People are realising that it's much more important having 1 or 2 special items than hundreds of mass-produced things.
While many traditional crafts have been in decline amid an increasingly digital age, globe making in this studio in London is part of its resurgence. Jane Werrell, NTD News, London.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox.